Good morning. I'm still reporting on the coup. Well, my trusty wife, though I hate to admit it, was right again. She switched to NewsMax months ago and only returns to Fox to watch Tucker Carlson. So, with Tucker's departure, I finally made the switch and I'm sold. Greg Kelly is way harder hitting than anyone on Fox is allowed to be. Here's a prime example from Kelly's show last night.
Where can you still find Americans saying true things? There aren't many places left, but there are some, and that's enough. As long as you can hear the words, there is hope.
Way to go, Tucker Carlson. There is hope, and he is talking about NewsMax, no doubt whatsoever, because unlike most of his former colleagues at Fox News, we are not afraid of the truth, and here's proof. Now, remember when Tucker aired the footage of the Horns guy being helpfully escorted by Capitol Police? Or the tape showing Officer Brian Sicknick alive and well when we were told he had been murdered by MAGA protesters with a fire extinguisher? That was a lie. Now, Tucker disproved all of this, and he was condemned for that by Republicans and Democrats alike. And it played a huge role in his getting fired. And when Tucker reported the story, Fox abandoned him. They ran away from the exposure of this great setup operation that was January 6th. And Fox News, show after show, from morning to night over there, ignored the biggest story they had in 20 years. All day long, it was about, well, business as usual, nothing about January 6th. Folks, this was just last month. Now, me, over here at NewsMax, not so much. This was too big a story. And the liberal media watchdog group noticed that. NewsMax gave Tucker Carlson's January 6th, well, they call it revisionism, nearly 7 times more coverage than his own Fox colleagues. Yes, and inside the story, Greg Kelly reports NewsMax's flagship show provided the most promotion of any program with more than 37 minutes of coverage, a total exceeding what all of Carlson's Fox colleagues provided combined. I'm proud of that. And it's time for Speaker McCarthy to make the 40,000 hours of security camera footage available to the American people. I like that he gave it to Tucker. Tucker has it. It's our property, the American people. It's not just for one TV show. It's also time for Speaker McCarthy to take back this hideous statement.
One of the first things Marjorie Taylor Greene said from the oversight dais was that Ashley Babbitt is murdered. Do you think Ashley Babbitt was murdered, or do you think the police officer who shot her was doing his job?
I think the police officer did his job.
Absolutely not. No way. Ashley Babbitt, an unarmed woman who posed no threat to anybody, was shot and killed, and that's a cop doing his job. More on that in a moment. But January 6th as an issue is not new to this show. Since that very day, I was deeply, deeply suspicious. I was actually standing in my kitchen watching TV when this happened.
This is the United States of America, and we're watching protesters try to undermine the course of an election, a constitutional process, through force, by storming the United States Capitol.
Look at that. That is outside. Jake, I'm sorry to interrupt, but look at those pictures. Have you ever seen anything like that? I mean, these are protesters outside on the steps of the Capitol. They're physically in there.
Well, it's a fitting end to an era that has been characterized by lawlessness.
You notice anything? Because we had just gone through, a year of Black Lives Matter riots, and I didn't see what they said they saw. So watch this. We're going to turn the volume down and watch the same sequence. It does not match. It's not what they wish it to be. Notice anything? People standing. Why are they pretending that something is happening that's actually not visible to them at that time? Because they're trying to damage an entire movement. Yeah, there were some hairy moments on January 6th, but actually most of it didn't come out for days or even weeks. And this was the theme of the mainstream media coverage, pretending they were seeing things that actually weren't visible.
Basically taking over, storming the Capitol it's anarchy. It really is anarchy. And the president has encouraged this time and time again, and they are stopping the constitutional, peaceful transfer of power.
Anarchy. Anarchy. You heard it say that. Let's try that one more time with the sound off, please. Yeah, I think the word might be dissonance. There's a there's a big gap between reality and what they're saying about reality, huh? It's amazing, isn't it? So the key to understanding January 6th, the protesters were not trying to stop the electoral count. The establishment, I firmly believe, wanted the protesters in the Capitol so they could stop the objections. The establishment wanted the objections stopped. Now, to stop the totally legal and constitutional proceedings under the Electoral Count Act of 1887. Do you remember this moment?
I, Paul Gosar from Arizona.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Arizona rise?
I rise up for myself and 60 of my colleagues to object to the counting of the electoral ballots from Arizona.
Is the objection in writing and signed by a senator?
Yes, it is.
It is.
Now, Democrats were trying the same thing every election cycle since the year 2000, but they couldn't pull it off. You need a House member and a senator to do that, and they only had a House member. The Republicans were making progress, legal progress. So what did they do? Well, a woman was killed right outside that chamber, Ashley Babbitt. What kind of impact do you think that had on the objectors? It actually scared some of them. Take a look at this for a moment, please. 2:44 p.m. Can you go back to business as usual when you have a dead woman on your hands? No, some senators actually did get scared. Ashley Babbitt, what they did to her, this unarmed, innocent woman shot and killed that day. We can't pretend that's normal or justified or in any way not criminal. So, we have not been ignoring the January 6th story here at NewsMax. Actually, just about every day, we talk to these people who were deeply affected. People like Martha Chansley, you know, the horns guy who was, well, in the middle of all of this, but he never hurt anybody. He never broke anything, yet he's the face of the so-called falsely labeled insurrection. We've spoken to Martha Chansley, the mother of Jacob Chansley, the horns guy, about what a great guy his son is and how he's been so unfairly persecuted and over-prosecuted. How about Richard Barnett? He has been on this show multiple occasions. Do you recognize him? Well, you probably recognize this picture, Big O. Again, he didn't hurt anybody, he didn't break anything, and he was allowed to come in to the Capitol complex. How about Enrique Tarrio, at one point the head of the Proud Boys, falsely labeled a white supremacy organization? That is a total lie. Now he's on trial for seditious conspiracy, a total farce of a case, of a trial. Zuni Tarrio, his mother has been on this show. I'm proud to have had all of these people. Joe McBride, a key lawyer who's been defending many January 6 defendants. Aaron Babbitt has become a friend, the widower of Ashley Babbitt, that woman who was so hideously taken from us. And Ashley Babbitt's mother, Mickey Withoff, a great woman who has such a story to tell. Then there's Ryan Kelly, who was a Republican seeking elected office in Michigan when he was arrested just for being at the Capitol on January 6th. Pam Hemphill, a 70-year-old woman who, again, did not break anything or hurt anybody, but was sent to jail for 60 days. We've also conducted interviews with January 6 prisoners while they're in prison, like Chris Worrell and Ryan Nichols. Again, these interviews conducted while they're in federal detention. It was my honor to talk to some of these people. They're amazing people, and they have been victimized. I believe they're political prisoners. And let me tell you something. When you're fighting for the truth, when you love the truth, when you crave it, You can't let anything stop you, not even men and women in uniform. Now, we support law enforcement, but somehow with the Capitol Police, who failed miserably that day, they seem to think that we, the people, work for them rather than the other way around. You know this guy?
Right now, one of those parties has a cancer, and we got to cut it out.
That doesn't sound remotely political, does it? Removing MAGA. That's what he's talking about. MAGA is a cancer in the Republican Party. Fanone. Totally political. By the way, he wasn't even supposed to be there on January 6th. Next.
The indifference shown to my colleagues is disgraceful.
Actually, the conduct that you've been displaying, that's what's been disgraceful, Michael Fanone. And here he is talking about, well, his injuries. He's a hero. Just ask him.
What happened afterwards is much less vivid. I had been beaten unconscious and remained so for more than 4 minutes. I know that Jimmy helped to evacuate me from the building and drove me to MedStar Washington Hospital Center, despite suffering significant injuries himself. At the hospital, doctors told me that I had suffered a heart attack, and I was later diagnosed with a concussion, a traumatic brain injury, and post-traumatic stress disorder.
Wow, heart attack, traumatic brain injury. Did you hear that? I don't believe him. I don't believe his injuries were that severe. Take a look at him 9 days after January 6th. On duty, giving media interviews, complaining about MAGA. 9 days later. Do you think he went through everything he said? How about Officer Hodges, one of these other from the Metro Police?
The mob of terrorists were coordinating their efforts now, shouting heave, ho, as they synchronized, pushing their weight forward, crushing me further against the metal door frame. The man in front of me grabbed my baton that I still held in my hands, and in my current state, I was unable to retain my weapon. He bashed me in the head and face with it, rupturing my lip and adding additional injury to my skull. At this point, I knew I couldn't sustain much more damage and remain upright.
Wow, injury to the skull. 9 days later, he's available for media interviews. No sign whatsoever of injury. You know, I actually once suffered a traumatic brain injury myself. It's traumatic, and you don't show up like that for work, like that, giving interviews. No way. How about this character?
That prompted a torrent of racial epithets. One woman in a pink MAGA shirt yelled, "You hear that, guys? This voted for Joe Biden." Then the crowd, perhaps around 20 people, joined in screaming, "Boo! No one had ever called me a while wearing the uniform of a Capitol Police officer.
I don't believe him. I don't believe he was called the N-word that day, which is a horrible, horrible thing to hear, to say, and to be called, but I don't think it happened because, well, all the security camera footage, it's been 2 years now, we've had national hearings, and we only have his testimony that the N-word was uttered. I mean, really, all those people were there. It wasn't caught on tape anywhere, and when it comes to that was Harry Dunn, something tells me when it comes to issues of race, he just might have a chip on his shoulder, huh? Racist? Let's fight. I don't know if this was taken before or after January 6th, but that guy is a handful. Absolutely. A couple more things about this. The media, they love this line. I don't know who came up with it, some Democrat, some liberal journalist, but boy, they love it.
This was the most violent and destructive assault on the Capitol, breaching of the Capitol, since the War of 1812.
The U.S. Capitol suffered its worst security breach since the War of 1812.
Nobody's attacked Congress since 1812.
It was the worst attack on the Capitol since the War of 1812.
Most of them don't know who actually fought the War of 1812. If they knew anything whatsoever, if they weren't so lazy, if they weren't so dishonest, if they looked at their telephone and used Google, they would find that that's just not true about January 6th. Let's go through it. 1998, 2 police officers, Capitol Hill police officers, were shot and killed by a madman with a gun, deranged lunatic, and he wanted to kill cops. Detective John Gibson, Officer Jacob Chestnut. When their families hear all this about January 6th, I wonder how they feel. Let's see. How about in 1983, a bomb blew up right outside the United States Senate. In the 1950s, a Puerto Rican nationalist, I believe, opened fire and seriously wounded 5 members of Congress. All right, they were shot in the House of Representatives. Around World War I, another bomb went off inside the Capitol. But again, it's all about January 6th, right? Why do they lie about it so obviously? Any theories? Joe loves to tell ghost stories, right?
The defeated former president of the United States watched it all happen as he sat in the comfort of the private dining room next to the Oval Office. While he was doing that, brave law enforcement officers were subject to the medieval hell for 3 hours, dripping in blood, surrounded by carnage, face to face with crazed mob that believed the lies of the defeated president.
Dripping in blood, surrounded by carnage. He would be a good guy to work in one of those haunted houses around Halloween, telling these ghost stories. Why? Well, they want it to be so significant, they don't want us talking about the election ever again, right? Just talk about January 6th. January 6th takes the election off the table, and they can do all kinds of things with the freedom of speech.
I condemn Mr. Carlson for siding with the enemies of democracy. I strongly condemn Speaker McCarthy's actions and fiercely oppose his decision to share this footage with Carlson. I urge Fox News to order Carlson to cease propagating the big lie on his network and to level with their viewers about the truth behind the efforts to mislead the public. Conduct like theirs is just asking for another January 6th.
That's the key right there. If you do anything, if you step out of line, oh, you're inciting violence, right? May I see the horns guy walking around the Capitol one more time? So doing a show about this unquestionably, inarguably, this is newsworthy footage. This is a threat to democracy. Of course it's not. Their rhetoric, their talking that way is a threat to democracy. So back to Tucker Carlson for a moment. Look, big things are in store, absolutely. And he just might be president of the United States. Not in 2024, maybe vice president. Stay tuned. It's real. Something big is going to happen. I'll be right back.
I'm still reporting from just outside the citadel of world freedom. Good day.